Hi everyone. My name is Sonia Rafika. Here I would like to give an explanation about chapter 13, which is power and politics in organization. Let's begin with the power and leadership. Basically, power is a capacity that A has to influence the behavior of B so that B acts in accordance with A wishes. Leadership, on the other hand, requires some congruence between the goal of the leader and those being led. A second difference related to the direction of influence. Leadership research focuses on the downward influence on followers. It minimizes the importance of lateral and upward influence patterns. Power research takes all factors into consideration. For the third difference, leadership research often emphasizes style. It seeks answers to questions such as how supportive should a leader be, how much decision making should be shared with followers, and lastly, leadership concentrates on the individual leader's influence, while the study of power acknowledges that group as well as individual can use power to control other individual or group. So, basis of power. Basis of power there is two. The first one is formal power, and the second one is personal power. Formal power is based on an individual position in an organization. It can come from the ability to force or rewards or from formal authority. There is three formal power. The first one is coercive power. The coercive power is a power base that is depend on fear on the negative results from failing to comply. The second one is scarcity. Um, it is a compliance achieved based on the ability to distribute rewards that others view as valuable. The third one is legitimacy power. The power is a person received as a result of his or her position in the formal hierarchy of an organization. The second one is personal power. Many of the most competent and productive chief designers need to have power, but they aren't manager and they have no formal power. What they have is personal power, which comes from an individual unique characteristic. There are two bases of personal power. The first one is expert and reverent. Expert power is influence based on spatial skill or knowledge. The second one is reverent power. It is influenced based on identification with a person who has desirable resources or personal traits. Let's move on to the key of power. The most important aspect of power is that dependence. The key of power is dependence. What creates dependence? There is three. The first one is importance, then scarcity, then the last one is non-substitutability. The first one is importance. Important, nobody wants what you have. It's going to create dependence. However, note that there are many degrees of importance from needing the resource from survival to wanting a resource that is invasion or adds to convenience. The second one is scarcity. We see the scarcity dependence relationship in the power situation of employment. When the supply of labor is low relative to demand, workers can negotiate compensation and benefits package that are far more attractive than those in a occupation with an abundance of candidates. For example, it's like a college administrator have no problem today finding English instructors since there is a high supply and low demand. The market for networking system analysis, in contrast, is comparatively tight with demand high and supply limited. The resulting bargaining power of computer engineering faculty allows them to negotiate higher salaries, lighter teaching loads, and other benefits. The third one is non-substitutability. The fewer viable substitutes for a resource, the more power a person controlling that resource has. At universities that value faculty publishing, for example, the more recognition the faculty member receives through publication, the more control that person has because other universities also want faculty who are highly published and visible. Then the next one is power tactics. Power tactics is a way in which individuals translate power bases into specific action. Using power tactics. Using power tactics. Some tactics are more effective than others. Rational persuasion, inspirational appeals, and consultation tend to be the most effective, especially when the audience is highly interested in the outcomes of the decision process. The pressure tactics tend to backfire and it's typically more success if they are information brokers. These functions are not without cost. How to quit their job, possibly because they did a great job, deal of extra work without reward. There are many ways to implement a social network analysis in an organization. The least effective of that nine. You can increase the chance of success by using two or more tactics together or sequentially as long as your choices are compatible. Using initiation and legitimacy together can lessen negative reaction, but only when the audience does not really care about the outcome of a decision process of the policy is routine. The second one is cultural preference for power tactics. Preference for power tactics varies across cultures. Those from individual countries tend to see power in personalized terms and as a legitimate means of advancing their personal ends, where those in collectivistic countries see power in social terms and as a legitimate means of helping others. Managers in the United States seem to prefer rational appeal, where Chinese managers may revert coalition tactics. Reason-based tactics are consistent with the U.S. preference for direct confrontation. The rational persuasion to influence others and resolve difference. While coalition tactics align with the Chinese preference for meeting difficult or controversial requests with indirect approaches. The last one is applying power tactics. People differ in their political skill or their ability to influence others to enhance their own objectives. The politically skilled are more effective users of all the influence tactics. Political skill is also more effective when the stakes are high, such as when the individual is accountable for important organizational outcomes. Finally, the politically skilled are able to exert their influence without other detecting it. A key element in effectiveness is damaging to be labeled political. These individuals are able to use their political skill in an environment with low level of procedural and distribute justice. When an organization has fairly applied rules, free for favoritism or bias, political skill is actually negatively related to job performance rating. Then we move on to the social network analysis, a tool for assessing resources. One tool to assess an extent of resource and dependencies within an organization is social network analysis. This method examines patterns of communicating among organizational members to identify how information flows between them. Within a social network, or connection between people who share professional interests, each individual or group is called a node, and the link between nodes are called ties. When nodes communicate or exchange results frequently, they are said to have very strong ties. Other nodes that are not engaged in direct communication with one another achieve resources flow through intermediary nodes. In other words, some nodes act as broker between otherwise unconnected nodes. How power affects people. So there is certainly evidence that there are corrupting aspects of power. Power leads people to place their own interests ahead of others' needs or goals. Um, Power also appears to lead individuals to objectify others, to see them as tools to obtain their instrumental goals, and to see the relationship as more peripheral. So power variable. First, the toxic effective of power depends on the wielder personality. Researchers suggest that if you have an unbiased personality, power does not corrupt you because you are less likely to think that using power benefits yourself. Second, the effective of power can be contained by organizational systems. Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is any unwanted activity of a sexual nature that affects in an individual employment and creates a hostile work environment. In my opinion, sometimes sexual harassment is still happen in the workplace because there is more cases regarding sexual harassment in the workplace. So I think this is really serious. Um, Power in action. Let's move on to the power in action. Whenever people get together in groups, power will be exerted. People in organization want to carve out a niche to exert influence, earn rewards, and advance their career. If they convert their power into action, we describe them as being engaged in politics. Those good political skills have the ability to use their basis of power effectively. Power are not only inevitable, but they might be essential too. Definition of organizational politics. There is no shortage of definition of organizational politics. Essentially, this type of politics focus on the use of power to affect the decision making in the organization, sometimes for self-serving and organizationally unsanctioned behavior. For our purposes, political behavior is an activity that are not required as part of the person's formal role in the organization, but that influence or attempt to influence the distribution of advantage and disadvantage within the organization. The reality of politics. Uh, Many managers report some use of political behavior is ethical as long as it doesn't directly harm anyone else. They describe political as necessary and believe someone who never uses political behavior will have a hard time getting things done. Most also indicate they have never been trained to use political behavior effectively. But um, yes, most also indicate they have never been trained to use political behavior effectively. So let's move on to the causes of consequences of political behavior. There are few factors of causes and consequences of political behavior. The first one is individual factors. At the individual level, researchers have identified certain personality traits, needs, and other factors likely to be related to political behavior. In the terms of trade, we find that employees who are high self-monitors possess an internal locus of control and have a high need of power. The high self the high self-monitor is more sensitive to social cues, exhibit higher level of social conformity, and is more likely to be skilled in political behavior than the low self-monitor. The second one is organizational factor. Although we acknowledge the role individual difference can play, the evidence more strongly suggests that certain situations and culture promoted politics, specifically when an organization um, when when the organization resources are declining, when the existing pattern resources is changing, and when there is the opportunity for promotion, politicking is more likely to surface. Culture characterized by low trust, role ambiguity, unclear performance evaluation system, win-loss reward allocation practices, democratic decision-making, high pressure for performance, and self-serving senior manager will create breeding grounds for politicking. Um, Because political activities are not required as part of the employee's formal role, the greater the role ambiguity, the more employee can engage in unnoticed political activity. Role ambiguity means the prescribed employee behavior are not clear. In this situation, there are fewer limits to the scope and function of the employee political action. Then the zero-sum approach. Zero-sum approach is a negotiation approach that treats the reward pie as fixed, so any gain one person or group achieves comes at the expense of another person or group. And the last one is inter-organizational factors. There are also political forces at work in the relationship between organizations, where politics work differently depending on the organizational culture. One study showed that when two organizations with very political environment interact with one another, the political interaction between them hurt performance in collaborative projects. On the other hand, when companies with less internal political behavior interact with one another, even political dispute between them did not lead to lower performance in collaborative projects. These studies show companies should be wary of forming alliances with organizations that have high level of internal political behavior. How do people react to organizational politics? So, I think we know people have an ongoing interest in how others perceive and evaluate them. I think it helps us initially to get the job we want in the organization, and once hired to get favorable evaluation, superior salary increases, and more rapid promotion. I think that's all for my explanation about power and politics in organization in chapter 13. Thank you so much for watching this. Hope you all and I hope you all enjoy, and bye bye.